Kiekoku, Sakinachuti are. Kanari Dayoner di Nare, Kanoseka Arima Suga. Kanare se onyu omamato kudasai hikuku. Jimaku ga hoyojo sawe masudaka mada. Rikale. Watashi ga etu yamikoto.
Tutorials with David. Hey guys, today I'm going to give a tutorial on how to create music with Bosca Ceoil. This is free music software that's open source, and the link will be in the description if you want to try it out yourself. I've tinkered this with a bit myself, and so I thought I'd just give a quick tutorial for beginners or for people who've never used this software before. And so I hope you enjoy and find this tutorial helpful. Feel free to follow along. So there's one important thing to note when using Bosca Ceoil is that there isn't any backup, and apparently this software can crash a lot. So it's important that you save regularly your progress and changes, so you can come back to it. I'll be showing later on how that works. But if you haven't gone to the habit already, regularly save and regularly back up your work so that you don't lose anything, because not everything has a recovery system. So do make sure you get into that habit of saving. If you have any experience with music theory or know about anything more about music than I do, then you'll probably have a much easier time creating good music. But this is a tutorial for all levels, because I'm a complete beginner. I thought I'd mention a couple of things that I picked up from studying, because it might be helpful for you as well. So the first and most important thing about creating this song that's catchy or interesting is to have that repetition, because then that's what separates between a random bits of music mashed together to an actual song. I don't know if you've noticed in any of your favorite songs, but there's always some sort of consistency, always some sort of repetition with the instruments and bits that are played. And so your mind sort of just kind of passively puts it together as a song. So it's very important to have that repetition, which is what I'll be showing later on as well. A second thing I found helpful is that once when you've finished creating a song, you can convert it into an MP3 file format, and in doing so, you can come back to it a few weeks later, and once when you've come back to listen to it, you'll be able to hear it from how it sounds like from a viewer's perspective rather than a designer's perspective. There's actually quite a library of instruments and quite a lot of sounds you can work and play with. So if you're a beginner starting out like me, don't discard your work because it might actually sound good. And I'd say everyone has to start from somewhere, nobody's perfect from the beginning. And I think if you have the motivation to keep trying, you'll eventually start to create masterpieces when you get better with practice. As with everything, practice improves your skills. And another thing I wanted to mention is, as part of my childhood, I was playing Wii Music, and it would give like this color of a text to suggest how loud the instrument would be. So a little bit of music theory is to make sure you separate the loud instruments from the quiet instruments, because that way the quiet instruments can be heard. However, there is a kind of a way around that in Bosca Ceoil. You can adjust the volume sliders, and through that you might be able to make it work. So I actually recorded that intro a few days ago now, and I lost motivation and thought I'd just scrap this video together. And then on my way home today, I would be sitting next to a girl who was listening to this kind of music that could be created potentially in Bosca Ceoil, and I believe this might have been a sign from God to continue and to not give up, which I thought was interesting. One final thing to note that I didn't include in the intro is I think it's actually quite helpful if you slow down the beats per minute on Bosca Ceoil, because then it can help you to identify where a part doesn't sound correct, and then you can tweak it. And I think it's great for making a part sound how you want it to sound like. So once you have Bosca Ceoil open, it will look a little something like this, where you can click to create notes to be played. And so that's how you can start to create music. But if you're like me and you don't want to use the piano, which it starts off with by default, I think, you can click on here to see all these different instruments. I personally like to change it to the drum kit because I studied the drums when I was at college, so I have some idea of how to create good beats with drums. And so that's why I personally switched it to drum kit as the first instrument. As you said, you can experiment and see what works. So I actually, from what I understand, a simple drum beat as my first part. It's bass and then snare. So bass, snare, bass, snare. Something like that. But you might not want it like that. This is assuming you're using the drums, but perhaps you want bass, 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 and then maybe 2 snares like this. So I'm using if you use the mouse wheel, you can actually change how many beats you want, or if you just want one long pause of a beat. So let's make it consistent, like this. That's the first part for the drums. Yeah, it's a good, I'm actually quite happy with that. So let's say I'd like to, alright, this is, it's going to get annoying. Alright, you gotta have to like pause it from time to time. So once you've clicked on add new instrument, it will randomly generate something for you to work with. And then you want to go to arrangement and click add new, which will give you another part to work with. So you can drag this and have it in the same part that's playing at the moment. So if you get up to like 10 parts long, you have about a minute or two of a song to work with. And that could be like the first completed song. So we've done our first part here, which is the speech. And for the second part, you've got to select 2 to change to the instrument. And then let's just see what this sounds like. I haven't actually seen this instrument before, so I'm going to have to click around just randomly just to see what this sounds like. This is probably going to sound horrible. And then when you're ready, click play. Yeah, so that's a horrible sound. Stick with my advice of slowing it down to like 40 beats per minute here. And then you can really figure out what you're trying to do. So I think another tip that I didn't mention earlier is, okay, wait, let's say we'll have that here, there, and then drag this here so it's by itself. Click here, and then it'll be playing this part and not that part. But you can like click and drag for how much you want to play, but let's just stick with this part because we want to figure out what we want to do with this instrument called Synth Brass Too Old. So let's go back to play so we can hear this. Okay, I'm gonna just rub this all out because it was just guesswork. So let's go C, C, C sharp, C, C sharp, and then G, G, F, G. Okay, let's try this. I mean, So for mirroring it, should look like this. Okay, so that on its own doesn't sound great. Let's see how it sounds when we combine it with the drums. So if we go back to 1. I'm actually kind of impressed with myself. I don't normally make music this good. Well, it's good by my standards. It might not be by your standards, but that's up for you to decide. So we've got our first 2 parts. Let's continue the process of adding. Okay, so I keep making this mistake. So what you want to do first is not click add new, click add new instrument, and then you want to make sure that the instrument's selected. When it's selected, which it is, and you click add new, and then you've got a new part for a new instrument. So let's go back here, go back to 2, and then so we're on 2, click play. Let's figure out what we want to do. Okay, so I tried C and C sharp. Let's do. You might have noticed there's these numbers on the side here. I think that's for the kind of like tone you're going for. So I think the further down, the deeper it gets. And maybe that's what we want to do here. So as long as you're mirroring it, I think it's not too bad. So it looks like something like this, I think. Okay. So that's our third piece. Let's see how it sounds like when it's all together. Okay, so I'd say this pattern here itself isn't bad. It's just I've made it really deep. If I had to analyze what's going wrong, I think it's gone too deep for it to be recognized. So if we just copy this pattern, it's maybe like 5. What does it look like again? Okay, 5. I think it was something like this. So, I mean, maybe this sounds good as well. As in, I was gonna initially just get rid of the bomb bit, but perhaps you want to have both. And now after listening to it again, I think I do want both. Yeah, so that's the third piece. So I'm not gonna show my process for all 10 pieces. That's just for the first 3. Once we've created 10, then it's just a matter of mixing it together and seeing what works to create your 10 pieces in the length of 10 to say you have your first song. So I'll see you on the flip side when I've created all 10 pieces and start putting together a song. Alright, so I've created 10 parts to work with, and now I'm just going to have a look to see if if you look on these parts here, you can see that there's a different amount of notes in each part. And so if you put the ones that don't have many parts with the other ones that don't have any parts, I think that's how you can make it sound nice. And so if I put 4 is 5, let's just see how this sounds like. So I've got 1, 2, 3, which I think is fine as it is. Let's just say that's fine, because you can tinkerize it as much as you want, but for now let's just say that's fine. 4 and 5. 4 and 6. 7. Okay, start from square 1. 8. What was it, 7? Is way too quiet. So if you wanted to make this work, which isn't by making like 7 quieter. Okay, that's not the right. Let's go to 7. So now you can like kind of hear 6. But 8's overriding it as well. So we're directing. Yeah, you might have to pause and come back to it because it sounds like a headache to the average person, I think. That's why it's a bit tricky and takes practice to create good music. But here we are. Another thing that I learned was I tend to use 7 just because it's my favorite number from 1 to, well, I thought it was 10. But it looks like it's maybe 1 to 9. But that's not actually a good idea because I think, as I mentioned before, the higher up you go, the lighter it gets. And the further down you go, the heavier the sound gets. And so if you want an instrument to actually sound decent, you'd have it on 5, where it's not too high and not too low. But anyways, that's just a bit of hindsight that I've learned. If you didn't already know much about music theory, that's something for you too. So let's go back and try and sort this out. Alright, what does 2 sound like? Alright, can I have something that sounds decent? 1. Let's see what this sounds like together. So that's not too bad. I'd call this. I'll pass these first two parts because I want to come back to it later. You might think this is rubbish. I might think this. Oh, I'm considering it rubbish, but if you come back to it later when you convert it to an MP3, you can see if it is actually rubbish when you're not worrying about how to make it sound good. So let's see what 6 sounds like. This is a quiet instrument. What if we throw in? What about this? 410. Alright, I think only these two are gonna work with each other. Can maybe throw in the drums. Yeah, it's good. Cool. Just get rid of that. 9. Okay, let's try and use 9. So there's not the notes. 5 is not notes. How's this sound? We'll come back to that. What have we already used? Let's say we use 8. 8 and 8, 9, 10. 8, 9, 10. Okay. So we've got, not gonna lie, most of these sound a bit garbage. Gonna try and make it work. Kind of just want to tweak it again. What if we just calm this guy down? And calm this guy down. So that's not too bad now. 9, 5. 9, 5. What have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a bit like Sudoku. What numbers haven't I used yet? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 and 10. 8 and 10. If I throw an 8. It's not too bad, not too bad. Okay, let's use 10. 10. So let's see. Let's try and use 4, 7, and 9. What does that sound like? Oh, I also just realized I'm not actually following my advice, so I haven't actually saved my project yet. I've worked hard on this, so let's not lose it. Let's go to, okay. So you don't actually have to this is how you'd export it to WAV to share it with others. But you don't want to necessarily do that until the end, because you only need the .ceoil file to continue working on what you left off. So 479. What does this sound like? Alright, I'll call that a pass for now. And I know I said ideally you want to get to like 10 parts to have somewhat of a song. But I'm going to stick with 7 because I'm feeling a bit pessimistic. But I can come back to this if later on I listen to it and think there's potential. So let's, as I said, duplicate the beginning, which is 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to export this to WAV. Just play for the entire song before exporting it. So like with everything, you can only get better with practice, and generally just don't compare yourself to others, and if you keep up the motivation to continue practicing, you'll hopefully be able to develop masterpieces of music. This is just a sample of where I'm still starting out quite new to creating music, but hopefully you'll be able to create better sounding music than what this sounded like. And I hope you found this tutorial helpful as an introduction to Bosca Ceoil. Thank you for watching. Bye.